On this video I'm going to mention a few useful advice for those who are looking for a shiduch, and specifically I'm one of the many shadchanim on the site shiduch.org. We spell shiduch with one D, shiduch.org. And on that site, if you're going to fill out an application, this doesn't cost anything, and if you hopefully with the help of Hashem want to find shiduch, I'm going to give some advice based on what I as a shadchan would want you to do in order to make my job, and probably most of shadchanim would agree with much of what I say, how to make our job easier, how to make it possible for us to work together. And even if you don't necessarily want to register on our site, I'm assuming that in most cases, if you do search for shiduchim through various Orthodox websites, they will expect something quite similar to what I will be saying. So, for one thing, pay great attention when you make your resume. Unfortunately, today there are a lot of people who are accustomed to the attention span is very short, and they're accustomed to constantly answer quickly in various types of messaging services, various types of WhatsApp and similar devices. All they're accustomed to do is say a few words without really checking the spelling. A lot of times the iPhone corrects the incorrect spellings, and so a shadchan could see this type of resume right away. Mistakes, not finished phrases, obvious incorrect follow of grammar rules, like the word I in English, of course, is always capital, but somebody who doesn't care, so he fills out quickly. Of course, I can understand that when you write I without a capital, without it being a capital letter, I understand what you're trying to say. But this resume will be sent to the prospective, if you're a man, right, to the prospective woman, or the other way around. So if your resume is not filled well, the other person might judge you as someone who just doesn't care, or doesn't bother even to correct simple spelling errors. And that's important. Read what you wrote, think about what you want to write. The resume has to be clear. Some people's resume is extremely short. They just mention how what their age of the other side they're looking for, and their own age, and maybe their profession, and almost nothing else. How are we supposed to look for your shiduch then? Of course, I understand for a lot of people the main thing is how she looks. Let's say a boy is looking for a shiduch, so he wants to first see her picture. That's the most important thing. So who cares about anything else? But that's not how shiduchim are made, certainly not how Orthodox shiduchim are made. We have to know something about you, and hopefully the other side also has a fully filled resume where you could tell a lot about the other person, and then we could see if there is any compatibility. Simply being observant and being a certain height and a certain age is not enough information for us to look for your shiduch. And if you're writing a very long resume with all kinds of unnecessary details, that's also a little bit difficult, because maybe it does tell us something about you, but the shadchanim are always much fewer. The number of shadchanim is much fewer than the number of clients. So the people who register on our database are in thousands, and the shadchanim is a few dozen. So each shadchan on average would then have to look for hundreds of resumes. So if the resume is extremely long, that's also not very good. So try to make it concise, but all the main points should be mentioned. Religious level of observance, what you're looking for from the other side, your profession, or what you're planning to do in the future. One very important point is not to lie on the resume. I wouldn't have to say that, but unfortunately people do lie. And when we catch them, first of all, we fix the resume, and secondly, then shadchanim know that you lied, and that's not a good thing for you. So don't think that you could get away with lying. It's in most cases all these types of simple lies, like a person who is 45 writing that he's 35, these things get caught, and after they get caught, this person, or a person who, let's say, is divorced with a child, and he says he was never married, right? How would he like it if the other side also did the same thing? So would introduce him to a woman who also happens to be divorced with a child, but she also says she was never married. So that's a great couple. Both of them deceived on their resume, and they should really fit each other. The point is, don't lie. You might want to sometimes not say certain information. Almost no field is obligatory in our application. I don't know about other websites, but most fields are not obligatory. You don't even have to say your status, whether you're married and right now you're divorced, or chas v'shalom, a widow. We don't have to know that if you don't want to tell us. But of course, when the field is skipped, a lot of times we will assume that, most likely if you were never married, you would have said that. So therefore, the shadchan ends up knowing anyway, and there's very little we could do to avoid it. If you do shiduchim not through websites, that would be different. If a shadchan knows a particular boy that had a short marriage and now is divorced and doesn't want to tell that right away. Of course, he'd be obligated to tell that at some point during shiduchim, but he doesn't want to say that immediately, because a lot of girls will right away reject. And he thinks that, if he says that after a couple of meetings, and the girl will see him and maybe will give him a better chance to, especially if the boy is a Kohen, so he has no choice. He can't marry a divorced woman according to Jewish law. So a lot of times he might not want to tell right away that he was divorced. But like I said, once it's a resume and there is a field, if it's left blank, it's very hard to hide this. On the other hand, when shiduchim are done the old traditional way without internet, then of course it might be something that the girl was just simply not asked. She's not sent a resume. She's just told, there's this great boy who has all these good qualities, why don't you meet him? And once they meet, maybe on the second meeting, he'll tell her, well, it happens to be I'm divorced, but I had a very short marriage, and if you want to know, this rabbi knows the story. So that's a possibility. But like I said, with us, you cannot lie. We don't allow lying on our resumes. Our shiduchim website, if we find out that somebody lied, we fix the resume. And often you might get a note on your resume that the person is not honest. So you don't want that. Another important point that I'd like to make is how to treat us. Now, I hate to say this, but a lot of times we're mistreated as shadchanim. I know the similar thing is said by all kinds of professions. For instance, a nurse might be complaining that in the hospital where she works, most sick people constantly scream at her that she wasn't fast enough, she didn't respond immediately, this, that, and they don't realize that she's just a person, she's trying to help. Most nurses are not there to ignore when the sick person needs help, but there are a lot of sick people. A lot of times the nurses are severely understaffed, so they complain that the patients don't understand us. But at least there you could say, okay, a person is sick, and maybe we could somehow understand at least why they get very upset if they're not immediately responded to. But by us, okay, I understand that it's sometimes frustrating looking for a shidduch, but please understand that the shadchanim are there to help you. A lot of our shadchanim do it for free, even just for a mitzvah. Even those who do it for money, they're not charging a lot. They're charging much less than real estate agents. And most people who become shadchanim are generally people who are kind and want to help other people. There were, by the way, cases in our database that some of the shadchanim help people in other ways. Meaning, for example, a person was looking for a shidduch, he couldn't find a shidduch, but the shadchan found out that he needs something else too, like an apartment he was looking for, or maybe even a job or whatever, and somehow the shadchan decided they'll help in that respect, not getting anything for it, just because they're good people and they want to help, because they fulfill to the best possible extent the mitzvah of you should love your fellow as yourself. That's why we should definitely respect shadchanim, and anybody who registers on the website should try to communicate with shadchanim with someone who you respect and who you want, by the way, to like you. I mean, one thing is that the shadchan, in order to work with you and in order to want to help you, he has to like you. And therefore, I mean, would you behave like that in a job interview? Some people, they behave with the shadchan in a way that's extremely rude, or simply like as if it's a kind of friend or something, a pal, again, as if they're messaging in instant messenger. I mean, you don't start, for instance, a conversation with a shadchan, the first message by the word hi. I've had that. A person just wrote hi, and I receive an email that there is a message from such and such person, it's a new client. So I'm going, of course, I'm thinking maybe there's something urgent, or at least I should try to respond as fast as possible. I go there and the database shows me that his only message is hi. This is not an instant messenger. If you want, write a nice letter and say what you're looking for and why I should look into your resume. I personally prefer to find myself clients that I want to deal with myself. And that's what I write on my resume. By the way, on our website, every shadchan has a resume of his or her own. So you could first read their resumes to see if who they're dealing with would apply to you. You could tell a lot about the shadchan based on their resume. So first you figure out, do I want to deal with the shadchan? Can the shadchan likely help me? And then you send him a letter if you think that this is the best way to get him to look at your resume. But a lot of times the new people will already look at their resumes when we want to. And many of the shadchanim, since we're volunteers and we have a lot of other things we do, after all, we also have to eat. So we work. I'm a programmer, for instance. So we don't have that much time. On our website, it happens to be that no shadchan is obligated to work on the website a certain number of hours per week. There are websites that require that the shadchan has to be at least, let's say, 6 hours a week. He has to work there, otherwise they won't allow him to be a shadchan on that website. On our website, there's no limit. Therefore, there are shadchanim like myself who are willing to work a little bit once in a while to check, maybe once a day, to check the new people sometimes, or to check the people who are already dealing with, the people we call clients, and see if there's anybody new for them possibly. Or sometimes when we have more time, we might spend an hour or 2 hours searching on the database, but we're not there to constantly get new clients. A lot of us just simply can't afford it. But there are a few shadchanim and shadchanot who are extremely hardworking, and most of them, by the way, take money, because after all, that's their main work then, and at least a large portion of their time they spend just doing shiduchim. So those active shadchanim, you probably want to try first. You probably want them to look at your resume. Now, there's two types of shiduchim our shadchanim do. Some of them find a shidduch within the database. So in that respect, we're all the same. We all see the same clients, more or less, except there are some situations that for some reason a client only wants to open his or her resume to specific shadchanim, or even to just one shadchan that was recommended to him. Most of the time it's not like that. So in that case, in the case that the resume is what's called hidden, and only some shadchanim see it, then what one shadchan sees, the other one won't see. But in vast majority of cases, all the resumes are seen by all shadchanim. So therefore, if a couple of shadchanim said, we don't have anybody for you right now, most likely the other ones also will say the same thing. So you don't have to ask the same question to many shadchanim, especially simultaneously. Writing a letter to 20 shadchanim and just copying the same letter, look at my resume, I'm looking for a shidduch, this is what I'm looking for. It's enough to get a couple of people to look for. But there are some cases, and that's the second situation, when a shadchan has their own people that they know who are looking for a shidduch. And they might think, once they see their resume, maybe that person is for the person I know who is not on this database. That's much less common. So again, you don't have to bother every single shadchan, just in case maybe one of them will have someone who is not on the database and nobody else on our database knows him or her. So therefore, in most cases, it's enough to have 2 or 3 people who are working with you. If it didn't work out, you could try a couple of other shadchanim, mostly the ones who are active. There is a way to see which shadchan is more active and write a message to them, like I said. And once you're working with them, the best idea is not to bother other shadchanim at this point. Unless, again, there's some specific shadchan that you think can be particularly useful to you. For instance, if you live in Germany, per se, we have, I think, one right now, shadchanet. We've had others, but some of them moved, some of them, I think, stopped working with us. By the way, that's another thing, that a lot of shadchanim try to be working as a shadchan, and they don't necessarily last because of the very reasons that I mentioned. That some clients don't necessarily behave the best way they could, and it's a very nervous job. So we had shadchanim who just tried it, and after a year or two they stopped. So right now I think we have one shadchanet, and a very active shadchanet in Germany. So if you're in Germany and for some reason you didn't send her a message right away, and you don't see her noticing your resume or trying to offer you shiduchim, then it's a great idea to maybe send her a message, because she happens to be in your country, so it's more likely that she will be able to help you or know someone who is appropriate. Or if you want to move to Israel, you want to then, even though automatically the people who live in your country are more likely to look at your resumes, still, if you're moving to Israel soon, then you want to send specifically a note to the Israeli shadchanot and shadchanim. By the way, I think actually the lady in Germany who is our shadchanet might be not on the English database. We actually have a Russian and an English database, but for those of you who don't know Russian, of course, the two databases are totally separate. So and some of the shadchanim are not Russian speakers at all on the English database. So on the English database, you don't have to worry about being offered somebody who only speaks Russian or anything like that. Obviously, right? The English database is totally independent from the Russian database. Only the name is similar. So when on your computer you type shiduch.org, it will automatically send you most likely to en.shiduch.org. That's the English. Now, those who also speak Russian, they could go to ru.shiduch.org. Or those computers who are set up with Russian as the default language, they automatically go to Russian part of the site. But this particular video in English is made for those who are planning to use only our English database. So I'm not even sure we have actually someone in Germany. But again, you might be able to find someone close, at least in Europe, if you can't find in Germany and you happen to be in Germany. But if you, let's say you're planning to move to Israel, or you want to ideally move to Israel, then you want to probably contact Israeli shadchanim, but not the American ones. So it all depends on the situation. Well, those things are pretty obvious. One very, very important point that I cannot overemphasize is that you have to reply on time. A lot of times people don't reply. They just don't reply. You know, it takes them sometimes months, sometimes even years to reply to an offer. And that makes shadchanim, first of all, gives us an extra job, because let's say I offered a resume of, let's say, A to B, and B said yes, interested. Then I send resume of B to A, and I'm waiting and waiting, and there is no response. And I have to keep that in mind. I have to, from time to time, either try to send another email, or if there's other contact information, maybe call or send a text message, a SMS, SMS. So I have to constantly worry and remember who did not reply, and sometimes the person I offered first is asking, well, what was the answer from the other side? Sometimes that person also is not asking, so I have to keep that in mind. I think that's very, very unfair. If you're leaving for a while, then my suggestion is you put your status as if you're in Shiduch, as if you're right now busy. So people don't offer you while you're, let's say, if you leave for 2-week vacation and you're not able to reply all the time, you have no computer access, then you should make yourself as if you're not available so that people will not make any offers in the meantime. And by the way, it's important to set up your computer in a way that whenever you receive a notification that a new message came or a new offer came, this doesn't go to spam, or it doesn't, the email that you're checking, the email with which you're registered, sometimes might consider the messages from our website, automatic messages, as spam, and will just send it to junk. So therefore, it's very important to set it up correctly. So if you see, for instance, already happened to you that you find out that you were given an offer, you log on by yourself, and all of a sudden you notice there was an offer, or let's say shadchan calls you and says, why don't you reply on the offer, and you see that you were not notified by the system, that means something is wrong with your account. You have to set it up to allow notifications to not be considered spam. Now, regarding what you are looking for, I think it's very important not to ask for too much, basically. You know, there are men, for instance, who are almost 50 and want a 35-year-old lady. And shadchanim simply stop dealing with these types of people. It's not like we don't want to help, but since we know that this is extremely unlikely to ever happen, why do we have to try so hard for him? There's so many people whose demands are reasonable. We'll work with them first. So first think about what could be reasonable demand, and when you write a resume, write demands that are within normal reason. And I mean, of course, there are ways to encourage shadchanim too. There are some shadchanim who could be encouraged, for instance, through money. There are some people by us, they're called VIP, who offer a huge amount of money. By the way, not so big as some other people charge. It's also not, you know, $10,000 or anything like that. I think it's $3,000 they offer. So if they offer such a huge sum of money, then the shadchan might try harder to look for their shidduch. But again, it's not up to the shadchan. So most ladies who are 35 are not interested in a 50-year-old man. So unless this person has something unbelievable in all kinds of other ways, I would suggest not to ask for anything unreasonable, and then more shadchanim will be working with you. Also, some people ask for things that are unimportant, and this is upsetting. Now, the shadchan won't stop working with you because of it, but you do get kind of upset when a shidduch doesn't work out because of some nonsense like the difference in height of 1 inch. Let's say the boy is shorter than the girl by 1 inch, and she says, absolutely not interested in a boy who's shorter than me. Well, you have to realize that 1 inch is not noticeable. It's very hard to know who is shorter, who is taller when the difference is only 1 inch. In fact, when I married, I thought that I was a little bit taller than my wife, and at that time there was no internet and there were no resumes either. At least we didn't marry through making a resume. So the shadchan thought we were both kind of tall, not extremely tall, but tall enough. My wife among ladies would be considered taller because ladies in general are shorter, and I would be considered more than average height, I guess. So we both seemed like we're the same height. It turned out that my wife is slightly taller than me, maybe by an inch or 2 inches, I'm not sure exactly even now. But it turned out that we found that out only like a few months or maybe even after more than a year of living together, because it's not something obvious. Especially, let's say, if a man wears black hat, right? So he looks taller. There's certain types of shoes sometimes you wear that make you taller. Of course, a woman, if she wears high heels, she'll look even taller. But again, she's married to a man who is a little bit shorter than her, and for her this is important to look shorter, that the man will look taller than her, then she just doesn't have to wear high heels. From what I hear, it's actually a hard thing to do anyway, to wear high heels. So why should she make it hard on herself? So if a boy is good for her in every other respect, and the only thing that's a problem is slight difference in height, I would suggest not to worry about such things. What's more interesting is that how some people react, how upset they get if they're offered something that doesn't fit their criteria. There was a case I had that I offered a lady a man who is a lawyer and a nice man in every respect. He had a lot of fancy clothes, he's a good-looking man. But he was a little bit shorter than her. She's a very tall lady. So she said no. Then I offered somebody else to her. She said yes, but the other side replied no. So I said, well, unfortunately, the other side replied no, the man wasn't interested, but if you want, we could still try with the first one. That's all I said. She got so upset. Okay, maybe I was insensitive. I have to admit, I sometimes am maybe slightly insensitive. I'm trying to not offend anyone, but I guess I was foolish enough to offer the same person a second time. But sometimes shadchanim do that, and it sometimes actually works. So all I did is I offered one more time the first one. She left our database and left a big note with so much anger, so much unhappiness in it. Poor girl, that we think she's by the way over 30. So she said something like, that we think she's second class product because she's an older single, and that's why we offer her all kinds of people, and we don't consider her wishes. As if I was trying to offend her. I wasn't trying to offend her. I thought that she should really think about it and maybe reconsider. If not, that's fine. But definitely her overreaction was a huge surprise to me. I mean, there's nothing terrible that I did to her. I didn't offend her in any way. I don't know why she had to be so offensive. And then you kind of start realizing why these people can't find a shidduch when they're in their 30s. If you behave like that towards shadchanim, pretty soon you'll have a reputation of a person who cannot hold themselves and easily gets angered, and all those things are definitely a minus when you're looking for shiduchim. And I'll notice all my lectures about the relationship between shadchanim and the clients. We're not talking about the people themselves, but when they meet each other, the prospective boy and girl, the same thing happens. Those people who can't form a normal relationship with a shadchan later can't form a normal relationship during shiduchim, and it comes out there, anger management problem or whatever other problems that they have. So you have to work on yourself, and shadchanim are people too. We're just trying to help. Another important person I want to discuss is paying the shadchan. So there are holy books that write that it's very important to pay the shadchan when the shadchan wants the money. Now again, not every shadchan wants the money. I personally do it for free. But again, I'm not a very active shadchan. Like most people who do it for free, we have other jobs and therefore we could only do it a little bit. That's why a lot of people I reject immediately and say to them, unfortunately I can't take new clients. If I see I'm unlikely to help that person or it's going to be very hard, I just say right away, I don't take new clients, which is true actually in most cases. I very rarely take new clients now because I already have a lot of clients that I barely have time to work with. So some of these people get very angry, by the way. I had there is a way, by the way, to say something bad about the shadchan, and we don't see who did it. So I'm not sure who did it, but one of the negative comments was, "What is this guy doing on this database? Throw him out of there." Since I never offend anybody, and the worst I could possibly have said is that I'm not taking you as a client, I'm sorry, I have too many clients, and usually I end with a nice wish, like, I hope you'll soon find your bashert or something like that, please try out the shadchanim. So this criticism was certainly totally unwarranted. I'm not obligated to take every person who wants me to take them. I don't have to. I'm doing voluntarily whatever I could do, Blineder. I cannot take every person as a client and just offer them people just because they want me to take them. They'll have to work with other shadchanim, and if no single shadchan wants to take them, then are they going to leave a nasty comment on every single one of them? Obviously not. So I don't know why, again, I can't see who was the person, so I'm not sure exactly what warranted such a comment, but it certainly, I think, was unwarranted. So the point is that those shadchanim who work for money, they have to be paid. You cannot avoid that. It's a very serious issue. First of all, supposedly in the Sfarim, it says that in holy books that Shalom Bayit, the love and happiness of the couple, can suffer in the future. But most importantly, this is just a purely halacha in terms of choshen mishpat, in terms of business dealings. Like anytime a person does something for you, you can't say he did it for free. Even if they, by the way, didn't say it's going to be for money. Because by default, shadchanim work for money. In most cases in our database, the shadchanim on their resume mention specifically how much they charge and for what. Most shadchanim charge only if the shiduch worked. Some of them don't even say which sum. They'll just take whatever you give them. So you have to be reasonable and think what's in this country a normal amount of money to pay. In Israel, it's a relatively small sum. In America, it's a bigger sum today. But a lot of shadchanim have the specific conditions. And like I said, they're not exuberant. Nobody on our database writes that for a successful shidduch, they'll charge $30,000 or even $10,000. Nobody does that. Even though the real estate agents usually get about that much. But our shadchanim do not get huge fees. So most of them will charge you $1,000, maybe $2,000. There are some shadchanim or shadchanot that might even charge you for setting up as well. That's not as common, but again, the person can make any conditions they want. Normally, the Jewish law says that when the shidduch is completed, you pay either at the time of engagement or at the time of the chuppah, you pay the shadchan. But if the shadchan makes a condition that if you want to work with me, any person I set up you with, whether it works or doesn't, you immediately pay me a certain fee. That's not going to be $1,000, but it might be $50, let's say. That's their right. You don't have to work with them. You could just say that, I'm sorry, I am not going to pay for just meeting someone. But those who do have that on their resume, they have a full right to do that. You cannot argue with this because that's their condition. Don't use. And on this note, I'm going to end this video. And I hope that you will, Bezrat Hashem, soon find your bashert.